It's not every day you get to open one of these. What is up, my friends? It is your host, Nick Anderson, also known as Amongst the Whiskey, and today we're getting into the 2024 release of Michter's 20-year bourbon. Let's go! Take these panties off. Okay, so the batch under review for today is going to be the 24I 3207 batch. This is bottle 259 of only 597 bottles. Now, that's not all of the bottles that have been released for the 2024 year for Michter's. There is a 24I 3208 batch floating around in the reviewer world, which also had something like 500 bottles in it. So decently small batch here. I don't know how many barrels went in to make a 20-year product produce 597 bottles, but I'd imagine it's probably a lot. You know, the Angel's share on a 20-year product is going to be huge. There's only going to be a little bit of whiskey left in that 53-gallon barrel. But this is just a whiskey you don't see every day. For some people, this might be a once-in-a-lifetime pour. Maybe you splurge for a 1-ounce, 2-ounce pour at a bar. You know, this is just not something that you open and pour and get to enjoy every day. I'm incredibly fortunate to have been able to open it with Amongst the Whiskey co-writer Jess Smith, and our first pour of this was spectacular. If you're more interested in reading my whiskey review for this, I'll have a link down in the description to my full article where I chronicle everything that I taste on the 20-year Michter's. But because this is such a high age statement, I'm going to get this one open and into a glass so it can start to open up. Now, obviously, Michter's believes that this is the cream of the crop for them. Andrea Wilson and Dan McKee start to pay extra attention to barrels once they hit the 17-year plus mark. For them, that's the fork in the road point. Is this going to turn into something that's over-oaked? Can it go to 20 years? Or do they have to throw it into a 10-year batch? I don't know. Ultimately, that's for the Michter's team to decide. I am just the enthusiast that gets to drink, review, explore, and appreciate the craftsmanship that went into making this product. So I won't hold you up here. Let's get into it. My goodness, that is Kentucky perfection in the nose. Not too hot, not too bright, not too tannic. Everything in its right place. It's got a little bit of fruit sweetness. It's got a little bit of creaminess. It's got a little bit of spice. For me, that is the holy trinity for bourbon, especially Kentucky bourbon. You get those three things in one place for me, I'm going to enjoy that whiskey. What I love about the 20-year product in comparison to maybe the 25-year or the 10-year product is that they bottle this at a higher proof. So we're getting this at 114.2 proof. I love that. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so the nose leads with a little bit of raspberry compote, transitions into this creamy, like, flan thing, loads of vanilla, and it's just rounded out by a nice little sprinkle of allspice and nutmeg. Yeah, just a splendid nose. I'm loving how it's blooming. There's no trace of any ethanol whatsoever. And I mean, would you just look at that color? On the palate. Oh my gosh, so poignant, so unctuous. The mouth coating is amazing. I get this red, bright maraschino cherry juice just sliding across the tongue with a little prickle of allspice, clove, black pepper as it works its way across. Wow. One sip is all I really need to tell you that this is an exquisite, exquisite whiskey. I love everything about this flavor profile, the way that it feels in the mouth, the way that it lingers, the way that it just delivers. It instantly gives me this nostalgic, I get chills. I think about some of the best times in my life, and even challenging times too, and I get transported when I have a whiskey as great as this. I get transported to some distant part of my memory, somewhere that I've been, a feeling. It's a beautiful thing when a whiskey is so good that it can just instantly take you on a journey. For me, that journey is taking me to the pine forests of Carver, Massachusetts, a place where I spent a lot of time growing up, going to Miles Standish State Forest and also visiting my grandparents that lived in the pine forest just outside of Miles Standish. My grandmother who lived in that house has since passed away, and that house no longer is in the family, so it's also a little nostalgic for things that have come to pass, and the things that have moved on from our lives that only exist in legend and story and memory, the things that we pass on to our friends, to our family, the things that we reflect on. For me, that's what whiskey is all about. Tasting very thoughtfully, tasting slowly, exploring the little nuances that remind you of a part of who you are. Whiskey is inherently a personal experience. I know you love to watch your whiskey reviewers. You wouldn't be here if that weren't true. But you should really take the time to see how a whiskey impacts you. Just because it impacts one person in a very particular way doesn't mean that your personal experiences will line up to that. What I will say for Michter's 20-year bourbon is this is the kind of whiskey that is going to take you on a journey. I mean, one sip, I probably could sit here for another 30, 40, 50 minutes and just reflect on the experience that I just had, where it took me, what it means to me. But through the magic of the internet, I won't make you sit here and watch me do that. It would be very quiet, very long, very boring to watch. So that is not what I'm going to put onto my YouTube channel. As much as I would love to show you my real process, nobody wants to watch my real process. It's slow, thoughtful, patient. I taste things 3 times before I write my full thoughts and give a numerical score. So you can trust that the Amongst the Whiskey perspective is a very well-researched, very well-reasoned perspective. And it's why I believe amongstthewhiskey.com is the best independent whiskey review site on the internet. I might not be cranking out as much content as some of the other platforms, but I think the quality of that content speaks for itself. Let me know down in the comments, would you agree with that sentiment? Or is there something that I can improve upon in my process? Let me know. Right, back to the whiskey. This is the perfect whiskey. It's so perfectly balanced. The way that it shimmers across the tongue, delivers a nice volume of flavor, doesn't overdo the proof. This is bottled right where it should be. Whoever made the decision to bottle this at 114.2 proof, kudos to you. Bravo, Michters. This is just an exquisite, exquisite release. Bravo. My goodness, the way that the linger just gives me that kind of raspberry tart profile, almost like a streusel. Get a little bit of like a coffee cake vibe here. It's definitely a leathery profile. I mean, there's no hiding that this is a hyper-aged bourbon. The color alone tells you that, but the flavor profile is not overly tannic. That is an incredible feat for a 20-year whiskey at this proof. More often than not, distillers have to water down their hyper-aged whiskeys to try to take out some of that oak influence. More often than not, 17 plus year whiskeys end up over oaked. This one is not over oaked, and that I think is a feat in and of itself. While it's not quite as rich, the pour that I think this reminds me most of is a 1916 to 1933, 18 summers old I.W. Harper bottled and bond whiskey. Yeah, I'm talking pre-prohibition distilled whiskey. This reminds me of the greatness of some of the best pre-prohibition whiskey that I've had the fortunate opportunity to taste thanks to great friends like Gregory Cloyd. And I'm so grateful even to have this in my glass. This is exquisite, top shelf whiskey. If you ever get the chance to try this for a reasonable price, whatever that means to you, please do so. It is unbelievable whiskey. It definitely can hang in the class of some of the most elite whiskeys of all time. I could nose this just all day long. Sipping late in the glass here, I just have to admire some of those legs. My goodness, look at them just... I was admiring my legs a little too closely there. Oh no! I've gone and spilled my 20-year Michter's bourbon. Oh no! This would be a great time to remind folks that retail on this bottle, MSRP for the Michter's 20-year bourbon is $1,200. And I just spilled my glass of it all over my desk. But my office is going to smell great for today now. But the beauty is, hey, when you own the bottle, you get to re-up yourself if you spill your glass. I cannot believe that just happened. I have been such a klutz lately, and I don't understand why. Maybe I'm just getting old or something, but I'm baffled at the fact that I just dropped my glass of Michter's 20-year bourbon. Wowzers. Yeah, back to the nose. Definitely a lot of great leather tones, some browned butter, some brown sugar. Oh, it's so comfortable. It reminds me of just being in a warm, sunlit breakfast diner. Big stack of pancakes just came out. Big slab of butter melting over the top of it. There's like this hum of the chatter, the comfortable familial chatter that happens in a breakfast diner. Early morning, weekends. It's just your moment of respite. This glass is like a moment of respite. It's ultra comfortable and just whiskey perfected. All right, back to that sip that got stolen from me by me dropping my whiskey glass. Unbelievable. Get this like waffle bread tone. It's so creamy. I think what I'm most impressed about is how that creaminess just ramps and ramps and ramps. It builds. It gets creamier and creamier in the glass. It gets creamier over time. None of those tannic, over oaky tones here. I'm baffled by this, to be quite honest. And I think what's crazy is I like this a heck of a lot more than I like the Michter's 25-year from 2023. Or is it 2022? Let me grab my bottle. I'll be right back. Maybe we'll do a quick head-to-head on the 20-year and the 25-year. Let me just hit the whiskey study here quick. Yep, there it is. What say you? Want a side-by-side with the 25-year? I'm not gonna fumble that one. Okay, it is the 2023 release of the Michter's 25-year. Obviously, crazy color on that. Polish up my bottle. Got a little dirty the last time I busted it out for friends that came over to try it. I don't have a glass. What do you do when you don't have a Glencairn glass? Whoa, yeah, okay. So back to the point and why I pulled this whole thing out. That is definitely a little over-oaked in my opinion. You get some of those tannic tones. It's not as creamy, delivers a little bit dry. It's still a magnificent whiskey. This is me nitpicking at the deepest level of nitpicking. But I prefer the 20-year, personally, over the 25-year from 2023. I think this is a whiskey that's going to go down in the history books. This one is going to be a collector's item. But for better or for worse, having bought both of these bottles at MSRP, and price aside, just quality of the whiskey, I like the 20-year better. All right, that's enough shenanigans. I'm not going back in the whiskey study and pulling out anything else crazy. All right, so I just wanted to do a quick comparison on this 1917 to 1931 Shenley, just because I think it has a good age statement to it. It's an old school pre-prohibition whiskey. I think it's a great example to compare against the 20-year. Do they stand up? So these old Prohibition releases are pretty cool. You can see the back of this one is a little scratched up just from, 100 years of storage. But they would come with this little keyway that you would get underneath the lip of the bottle. I've already opened this. And came with some instructions on how to open these old sardine cans, but part of the reason they put them in these containers was to show that the contents were genuine and they had not been tampered with or adulterated. So pretty cool bottle. I opened this one with Gregory Cloyd at another one of our legendary tastings. This was actually distilled by Edward H. Brinkman in Ohio, so this is an Ohio whiskey. Tastes like an Ohio bourbon to me. It doesn't say whether it's bourbon, rye, mash bill, anything like that, but Shenley was a pretty prolific brand back through Prohibition. I did an interesting write-up on this bottle. I'll include a link down in the description as well. But yeah, let's compare against the 2024 Michter's 20-year bourbon. Does pre-Prohibition whiskey knock the Michter's down a few pegs? Is the Michter's maybe better than some of the pre-Prohibition whiskey? So moving forward, amongst the whiskey Glen here is the Michter's 20-year. The Antler Glen, it's a wee mini Glen, wee Glen we like to call them. That has our pre-Prohibition whiskey. Okay, Michter's very lovely, very powerful, very potent, very aromatic. The pre-Prohibition is bottled in bond, so it will be 100 proof. Definitely a different animal, working with some different wood. Pre-Prohibition obviously had different oak. A lot of the oak was old growth back when they were first harvesting these barrels. Newer oak tends to be harvested a little earlier, and so the grain structure is a little looser on modern oak versus what you'll probably find on some of the older whiskeys. Yeah, okay, Shenley Sardine Can is smelling very tropical. I'm definitely getting a lot of those kind of coconut tones, which was a note I found on the Michter's 20-year as well, but it was kind of on the tail end of the experience. Let's try it. Wow, okay, so what this does really well is that leather tone, for sure. Leather is there in spades. I think that is a hallmark of ultra-aged whiskey. Obviously not quite 20 years here. This is a 14-year bourbon. When you're talking fall of 1917 to 1931, that is, quick maths, 14 years. Ooh, it's so dusty old funky. To me, it smells a little bit like a battleship. If you've ever been onto a naval warship, you know that metallic smell you get? It's there in spades. My goodness, I always love getting to have a taste of that Shenley Sardine Can. I really only ever open it when I really need a good comparison, or I'm introducing somebody that has never had pre-Prohibition whiskey to pre-Prohibition whiskey. Love sharing that pour with people. Tends to get some raised eyebrows when it comes out. They're like, "You're pouring me what?" Really unctuous, thick, rich, full, viscous mouthfeel on that pre-Prohibition. Part of why I love old whiskey that was well made. Not all of it was. Gotta look up for the good stuff. So, does Michter's 20-year bourbon have a prayer at living up to pre-Prohibition whiskey? Final taste to find out. It's even better. Michter's bravo. I have to say, bravo. Spectacular release. That is going to earn my top score. That is a perfect whiskey. 5 out of 5. You heard it here first, folks. Michter's 20-year bourbon is the real deal. Poor Shenley. You tried. But that's all I have for you today, folks. If you can get your hands on a bottle of the Michter's 20-year bourbon, you absolutely should. Let me know down in the comments, what is the absolute most you would pay for a bottle or a pour of Michter's 20-year bourbon? After this review, has that changed your perception of how much you would spend? Are you thinking about increasing it up? Are you thinking about upping your limit? Or are you still going to be a pass on this? Is this just out of your range? Really interested to hear. Drop me a comment. I will respond to every single one of them, because that's just the kind of guy I am. But until next time, my friends, keep it amongst the whiskey.